Hi again then guys, and welcome to another Special Projects Replica style build, and in this particular replica we're going for a car which is much more obscure. Only 9 of these were built in real life. It's the TWR performance version of the Jaguar XJ220. Now the XJ220 of course is one of the quickest cars of older Gran Turismo games, not so much anymore. It's not as quick as it arguably deserves to be, plus the handling at its top speed level is not very good. It tends to weave all over the road. At normal speeds though, around technical tracks, it's one of the best supercars in the game. And the TWR version of the XJ220, called the XJ220 S, is basically the ultimate version of the XJ220. It has 680 horsepower, it weighs 1,050 kilos, in real life, which is remarkably lightweight given the size of the car, and the performance is monstrous. 3.3 seconds to 60, 228 miles per hour. Like I said, they only built 9 of them. Even less of them are actually still on the road. Some were converted for track use, etc. So it really is the ultimate XJ220. I've always loved this car, and visually it's also different. The real vehicle has a much more aggressive body kit with extra driving lights at the front, exposed headlights rather than the kind of covered up, not quite pop-up headlamps, but that kind of thing on the normal XJ220, and a much larger Ferrari F50 style rear wing. Now we can't do that on Gran Turismo of course, so this is much more of a mechanical build with some visuals, but obviously not total visuals. We can't get the larger wing, etc. So as far as the visuals, I've gone for the old school BBS rims, and for the colour of both the body and the rims I've gone for a yellow. It was available in more colours though, so you can change it if you want. I just personally like it in the yellow, and the yellow that I went for is called Naples Yellow. It's a kind of an off yellow, slightly old school looking, and it's from the Suzuki Lapin Turbo, the first Suzuki in the dealership. It's a great looking yellow. If you want to go for another colour as well, or instead even, there are other great ones as well. It's available in a kind of a Gulf blue, a really bright red, a matte grey. It was finished in a number of awesome looking colours. So there's no real need to go over to the visual tuning garage for that, so we'll go straight over to the mechanical garage first of all, and then of course take it out to a racetrack to see just how extreme this car can be. Now, unfortunately, as far as these replicas go, this one isn't exactly the same as the real car, and that's relatively rare for my replicas. Usually the specs are fairly easy to replicate on the game. You can get the power, the weight, etc. But in the case of this car, the real vehicle is so much lighter than we can make the XJ220 on the game that there's just nothing we can do about that. But, nevertheless, the build is still a good representation of the car. It's as close as we can get to it. And to be fair, the car will probably never be featured on Gran Turismo. I'm only aware of one racing series, or racing game series, that it was featured on, and that's Project Gotham. Now I've gone for sport soft tyres, because obviously it's more of a street-based build. I have upgraded the brakes on this one, but you don't have to, and it's certainly justified in not doing that. For the suspension, I've got the ride height as low as possible at the front, and then much, much higher on the back at 85. But the effect of that on this car is basically that it just levels out the body, because naturally the XJ220 sits with its nose in the air, and the TWR version just isn't like that. The springs we've increased to 1050 and 1375, the dampers to 5, anti-roll to 3, camber we've got a little bit, kind of for the visuals, also for driver control on 0.5 degrees front and rear, neutral toe as usual. I wasn't able to find if the TWR version uses an uprated gearbox. I should imagine that it does, but if so, I wasn't able to find the ratios. So of course you could put in whatever ratios you want, but I opted to leave it with the stock box because that just feels more authentic, as I don't know the real numbers. As far as the diff, I've gone for halfway on initial torque, low as possible on acceleration and braking. As I said earlier, the real car has 680 horsepower, so you want an oil change, and then you want to fit it with the high RPM turbo and reduce the power down to 98.7%. Then for the weight, you want the full weightless package. You can't adjust the downforce, and obviously it's still almost 200 kilos heavier than the real car, but there's just nothing we can do about that. It really makes you appreciate just how amazing the real car is for being so light. But that's it overall for the build. Now let's of course take it out to a racetrack. Now, even though we don't know the real ratios of the car as far as I'm aware, I'm sure somebody does, but I don't, and the weight isn't the same, the visuals aren't the same, and this car will probably never be featured on the game, but still, it's an awesome performance car. The XJ220 is already an extremely fast machine, even by today's standards. And back in the 90s, of course, it was the fastest car in the world for a short time. This version is even quicker. And around the track is where you notice the biggest difference. The handling on this car is phenomenal. It's so smooth and easy to drive, especially given the 680 horsepower that you're working with, and the fact that the XJ220 is one of the biggest supercars in terms of physical size and just the amount of ground space that it covers. This car is like 7 feet wide, it's extremely long, but it still handles itself so well. It really does feel like a Le Mans car for the road, and that's appropriate because it did race in the Le Mans. But overall, if you do decide to use this replica of the TWR version, a personal favourite supercar of mine, then obviously I hope you find it fun and potentially competitive in racing, though the PP isn't as relevant as sometimes. But if you'd like to keep up with other builds like this, be sure to subscribe down below for that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.